So, one of the things that I have been getting a lot of questions about, getting a lot of comments and whatever, is how do you come up with and develop a succinct worldview? How do you have all of these theories kind of come together, and like, where did they come from? And it seems like I have a very, if not a purpose-driven life, then I would say a very purposeful life. Like you don't get to where I am by accident. Like, you don't just randomly decide a couple of random things and come to where I am. So the first thing that I feel like really kind of gave me a sense of purpose, as a calling, as it were, is I started seeing commercials and videos online for the GR, for the Ricoh GR, which, if you watch the rest of my channel, is this tiny little compact camera that is extremely limited, and yet people love it. And I don't know, like, the reason why people love it is kind of weird. Like, I don't know, like, I watch a bunch of camera review things in my downtime, which I probably shouldn't, because I'm watching reviews for things I don't actually ever want to buy, but I like the technical aspects, and I like understanding things from a mental standpoint, so I watch these things. And there's all sorts of people who review the GR, and they're like, this is awful, here are all the problems with it, but people love it, and I get why people love it, but it's not for me. And it's like they're making all of these excuses, if they're not just outright saying this is the worst. And yet, for the people who love it, it's the only camera that they own. Like, it's a way to get away from everything else. So it appealed to me, and I feel like for those who it doesn't appeal to, I feel like you gotta like take a few steps back and realize I had a fairly big studio. I had tons of equipment, tens of thousands of dollars worth of footprint and stuff. And it's like, once you have stuff, you have to have a place to put your stuff. And not only do you have to create a studio that's big enough and complicated enough to like use all of that stuff, you then have to have space to put that stuff in. And it was just a nightmare. And then if you need to travel, you need to have carriers for all of your stuff to bring to shoots, and you have to have justifications, and you have to continually find jobs that pay enough money to offset the cost for all of these things. And it becomes this, you just basically become a consumer at some point. So going from that to a tiny little camera that can give good enough results that I can still do something that I enjoy, still make enough money to enjoy my life and pay my bills and do all the things. Having both of those things at once, it's such a relief. Like, it goes back to the whole Fight Club saying of like, the things you own eventually will own you. So I feel like having the GR, having just a reduced footprint, like, I need to bring in less money because I have less expenses. Like just having a minimalist lifestyle, it really just changes the way that you look at business in photography. And I think just generally, like, I'm sure that there's a bajillion different kinds of businesses, and I generally do work with businesses, so I could, speak intelligently on a lot of different online whatevers. But so often with businesses, they want to grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's at some point, in business, you get so big you can't really sustain, or you're killing yourself to do 20 different things, and you're like an octopus that's got your hand in everything. And it's like, what I find is that there's, sometimes you need that growth period where you're so big and you're doing 5,000 different things so that you can realize, this is what I actually enjoy about my job. This is what my bread and butter is. This is what actually makes me the most money. This is what I need to do that. These are the things that I enjoy. And then you just, kind of come down, and you're like, I can focus on the thing that I enjoy and not have it be, having to do all the different things and like running myself crazy. And I actually can have a work-life balance, and I can actually, just focus on doing the one thing. And I feel like a lot of that comes down to getting your finances in order and not having debt and not having, so many distractions in your life. So, I feel like the GR said all of that to me without me figuring it all out. So I got the GR really before I had an idea of what I wanted to do with it. It just, as something to buy while I'm still in my consumer mindset, I buy this thing. But as soon as I buy it, I start trying to get rid of other things. That was the first thing that came about. The next thing that kind of happened was I always wanted to get into filmmaking. So while I've not really saved up the money and done the thing yet, it's always been in the back of my mind that whatever camera system I have, I need to be able to make movies on it. So when I'm thinking about the GR and I'm really, contemplating what that means for my career and where I'm going, the first questions that I started to have is could I make a movie on this camera? So I've made other videos here about the limitations of the GR when it comes to video. So it's a fear. It was a real, not just an anxiety, but an insecurity that if I go down this route and I buy this little camera and I don't have all the lenses and all the capabilities and the 4Ks and the 6Ks and now we're at 8K in some of the cameras. And it's at some point I thought I would be a real photographer, even though I'm doing this professionally and I'm making money and I'm making a living. It's that imposter syndrome of I need a bigger camera or else, people aren't going to like me, or I need this. And it's you build yourself up because, when you're starting out, you have that insecurity of if I show up to a gig with a tiny camera, no one's going to like me and they're going to know that I don't know. So you show up with a big camera and it's not that the results are any better, it's that you feel better, and then you start using that as a crutch. And then anytime something new comes out, you're maybe I need that, maybe I don't. It's almost a sign of, rebellion, where you're maybe I don't need the newest camera, I can just use my old camera. And then you're maybe I can actually just get smaller and I can do the work that I need to do without this huge footprint, and I can get rid of things and I can live a minimalist life and I can not have a bajillion things. And then you just start appreciating empty shelves, and then you're maybe I can get to a smaller space and what have you. So as I'm thinking about can I do a movie, can I do a film on something that's kind of infamous for having bad video quality? Most of what I do and most of what I sell is stills, and the camera does very well for that, but I'm there's video problems, and how am I going to make a movie like that? And it really made me look at other filmmakers that I've admired and that I've looked at before, and which ones don't care as much about the technical aspects. What are there movies that just are a meditation in minimalism? And the closest I came to that was Herzog. And I'd been watching Herzog and loving Herzog really since I was a young adolescent, probably 11, 12 years old. And there's something about his films that you just have to sit with. And they're not trying to feed you constant stimulation that I feel we're on now with this digital uncanny valley thing that we're doing. And there's just something very human and enriching to the soul about his films. And I thought, not only is that the kind of work I actually would prefer to be doing, but that's the kind of life that I would like to be living. That's the kind of thing I would like to be living, having in my life. The kind, I would like to get off of the train that I'd been on for so long. All the things that, people tell you, this is where you need to be in life, this is what's going to make you happy, and all of the things that marketers tell you is important in your life are the last things that are important, and they make you miserable. And I'm I actually would much prefer my life to be much more simple and just get off of the fast track of things. And I was thinking within marketing and within me traveling and within me doing all of these things, what can you market something from that standpoint? I think the answer is yes. I think there's a minimalist, old world, lived in small town that isn't, all McDonald's and feels like it's, some sort of big parking lot, which I think a lot of small towns tend to start feeling that way. And it's they feel insecure in being small and being local. And it's like, I feel like that's actually what people want now. And I think about people my age, and I think that most people now, they don't want a big job and all the things. What they actually want is to be debt free and to live on a homestead somewhere and grow their own food and just kind of drop out of the race of things. And I feel like that is exactly what this is about. And I feel like it's trying to, because just fundamentally that's what I'm levitating towards, and what everything that I'm doing is towards. I feel like my art and my output is mirroring that. So is it the super clean veneer advertising that makes everyone feel insecure, that they're less than if they don't have the thing? I don't think that that's what I am, but I also feel like that's not what people want anymore. I feel like people are dropping out of that in large, and I feel like when you're making products that last, when you're making products that have an earthier, sustainable, long, the feel of time, the feel of humanity, the feel of community, I feel like that is what I've been trying to focus on in a digital space, in a digital nomad type of environment. And I feel like there's so many companies that want that, but they don't know how to express that. So, that's part of it. I also feel like the other part of that to me was I was going through a divorce when all of this started happening. And it came about because she had cancer, and she was given a very short amount of time to live, expectations from doctors. I'm going to cut to the end so nobody thinks this is a super sad story, because she's fine now, and while it's stage 4, which means it's in her bones, there's no detectable cancer in her body, nor has there been for a couple of years now. But you get the news that you've got a few months to live, and you start processing that as a human being. Like, oh my God, I'm going to be gone shortly. And then you pull through. I think there's a reassessment and a new understanding of life and priorities. So I think what was happening, which happens to, I think, a lot of couples, is you get together and you're like, this is what's important to me and this is what's important to them. And you're like, that doesn't really mesh. So you compromise. And I think that when she came out of that, she's like, I'm not willing to compromise anymore. This is what I need. And I'm like, that's exactly a recipe for me to be miserable. And she's like, well, what do you need? And I'm like, I need this. And she's like, I would be miserable with that. And living in the middle, we're just kind of wasting our time. So why don't you go do something that makes you happy, and I'll go do something that makes me really happy, and we can both be really ecstatic doing that. And that's a sad thing, because something is ending, and it's scary because, it's new, and you've got possibilities, but also negative possibilities. So you're like, what do I do? So, I'm going out and I'm being single in my 30s, which is not something I think anybody wants. One of my favorite memes that I found online in regards to this is there's no longer plenty of fish in the sea. There's a couple of fish amongst the trash, which is, also a pretty good way of describing dating out there. And, I started dating, and there was a bunch of just garbage situations that I was finding myself in. And I just find that, there's a couple of people like me online, but for the most part, what most women I was finding want is they want somebody to watch television with. They want somebody to watch reality television shows and tell them that there's nothing wrong with that. They want to, kind of just be pampered in a, we're going to sit here and live in a digital world and work jobs that we hate, and we're going to want things that we can't afford. And it's like, well, if you really want the thing you can't afford, then work for it. And they're like, yeah, but then I'd have to give up my show. And it's like, okay, you're in this trap. And I find that the people who are like that, I was working a lot, and it's like, once you cut out the parts of the work you don't like, I really enjoy working. I really enjoy providing services for people. I really enjoy customer interactions, and I really enjoy money. So it's like, if I'm going to take a night off or go and do something. And, like, I want to really enjoy myself. Like, I really want to go do something fun. I want to go see something. I want to go do something. I want to taste something. And a lot of people just want to microwave some food that's awful for them and tastes awful, and watch bad television, which is awful for them. And they just want to sit there and do that. And it's like I was hating myself. And I started realizing, like, you know, if you really want to be selfish, and you need to be selfish to focus on your goals and what you want in life, like, what that means is that you say no. When people make offers to you that you don't think are good for you, you're like, nope, I'll hold off and accept nothing rather than accepting less. That's the secret to life, is that I'm not going to settle. I want something that works the way that I want it to. And if I can't have that, I would rather have nothing. And I'm going to work on the things that I do enjoy and that I do like. And the rest of it's just, we'll figure it out. Because the moment you start accepting things that don't make you happy and are not working towards the goals that you have, what you end up doing is you settle and you're invested in this. So it's like, I've got this partner who I don't really like and they want to do things. Well, I'm going to get sucked into doing those things too, even though I don't like them. And then I'm going to become resentful. So finding somebody who has similar goals and similar mindsets, very important. So I kind of, I started dating and I started doing all that. And I started thinking like, I'm just going to drop out. Like, if the right person comes along, the right person comes along. So that's essentially what I did. And I started traveling more, and I just started, thinking about like, I'm going to do business and I'm going to like find friends out there. Like, like there's a lesser bar for friendship. There's a lesser bar for acquaintances. I'm just going to get out there and travel a lot and meet people and, find people who have similar interests and, find people who like working and like being productive, but maybe aren't as focused on just the corporate side of things. And it's been really nice. Like, it's a really nice place to be. I go hiking a lot, and even though that's a pretty solitary endeavor, what I end up finding is that you do run across other people on the trail, and you're like, hey, what's going on? You want to go do something? Or, like, hey, I, run a business from home, because you're out hiking in the middle of the day or whatever. When most people, quote unquote, should be working. And it's like, I meet somebody there, and it's like, oh, you've got a business too. Well, do you need any help? And then it's like, I do business to business stuff. And, the idea that like I travel a lot more than I used to. So, because you're so online and your communications are online, I don't know, it just makes life easier to have those people who understand that like my life is my laptop. So, at least my business life is. I wouldn't say my actual life is, because like I said, I go outside and I do a lot of really interesting things all the time. So, I don't know. I just feel like that's such a better, healthier place to be living in. And that's kind of where I'm at in this kind of nomadic, digital future hellscape that we live in now.